First off, wow. There's quite a wonderful energy going on here, and we have never had to employ bouncers before, but there are student bouncers outside these doors right now. So those of you who are here in the room, you are the fortunate few that could join us, and we also want to say welcome to the individuals who are watching this via the web, as we're live streaming this, given the incredible demand for today's discussion on sustainable food entrepreneurship. So it says here that I should suggest that you get lunch in the back of the room, but I have a feeling that that's just not going to happen. So if you don't have lunch, hopefully afterwards, please grab a lunch on your way out. And please also make sure to fill out the surveys underneath your chair. That helps us give us good feedback on here. And also a note that everything today at today's event is compostable. It's a collaboration between the Center for Responsible Business, this being a Peterson Speaker Series event, the Dean Speaker Series, and our good partners at the Berkeley Food Institute. And I will say just a couple words about the Center for Responsible Business and the Berkeley Food Institute, and a few words about our moderator and fine panelists, and then Will, I'll be turning it over to you. So the mission of the Center for Responsible Business is to develop leaders who redefine business for a sustainable future. And we do this through four main activities: curriculum development, events and forums, such as today's Peterson Speaker Series event is a great example of that, research and content development, and we also see ourselves as a connector. And in this role as a connector, the Center for Responsible Business helps to connect Haas with the incredible strengths represented across this great University of California, Berkeley. Our collaboration with the Berkeley Food Institute here today for today's event is a good example of this, where the Berkeley Food Institute is committed to catalyze and support transformative changes in food systems to promote diversity, justice, resilience, and health from local to global. And the BFI envisions a world in which nutritious, affordable food is available for all, and is produced sustainably and fairly, ensuring healthy people and a healthy planet. So I'd like to give an overview of our moderator and panelist. Will Rosenzweig is the Dean and Executive Director of the Food Business School. He's the moderator today. Will has spent his career as an educator, a serial entrepreneur, and a venture investor. Will was the founding CEO of the Republic of Tea, the company that created the premium tea category in the United States. As an entrepreneur and investor, Will helped grow Old Walla and Stonyfield Farms, and in 2007 co-founded Physic Ventures, the first venture capital firm supporting early-stage companies in health and sustainability. Will is the recipient of the Oslo Business for Peace Award, which is the highest honor recognizing ethical leadership in business, and in part because of his contribution to education and social entrepreneurship here at Haas. Will teaches the Food Venture Lab here at Haas, and I'm just very curious. A show of hands of the students who are part of Will's Food Venture Lab. Look at those hands. Absolutely wonderful. Also curious here, keep your hands up, please. Show of hands, who are students? Students, raise your hands. Oh, this is wonderful. We're also proud to call you, Will, a Berkeley Social Impact Fellow through the Institute for Business and Social Impact. To Will's left, Alice Waters, chef, author, food activist, founder, owner of Chez Panisse restaurant. And Alice, of course, has been a champion of local sustainable agriculture for over 4 decades. In 1995, she founded the Edible Schoolyard Project, which advocates school lunch and sustainable food curriculum in every public school. She's been vice president of Slow Food International since 2002. Her honors include her election as a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2007, the Harvard Medical School's Global Environmental Citizen Award, which she shared with Kofi Annan in 2008, and her induction into the French Legion of Honor in 2010. We're very proud. Alice is a UC Berkeley graduate and was also presented with the National Humanities Medal at the White House this September. And Claus Meyer, to Alice's left, of course, a world-renowned restaurateur, food activist and cookbook author, amongst many other things. He's co-founder of restaurant Noma was co-founder of restaurant Noma in Copenhagen, which was named the world's best restaurant 4 out of the last 5 years. Widely considered the father of the new Nordic cuisine movement, he is a prominent advocate for the farm-to-table movement, which seeks to foster local agriculture and encourage sustainable food production. Claus is associate professor in the Department of Food Science at the University of Copenhagen and an adjunct professor in sustainable gastronomic entrepreneurship at the Copenhagen Business School, where I'm pleased to also have an affiliation. Claus is the founder and main sponsor of Melting Pot Foundation, whose aim is to help disadvantaged people through food-related projects throughout the world. In 2013, he opened a gourmet restaurant, Gusto, in the poorest capital of South America, La Paz, Bolivia, and is currently developing an incredibly interesting and important community culinary center in Brownsville, Brooklyn. We are also very proud to call Claus a Berkeley Social Impact Fellow through the Institute for Business and Social Impact. So I'll just say again, wow. Wow. I am thoroughly excited for today's event, and Will, I want to turn it over to you, please. Will.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you all for being here today. It's a testament to Berkeley that an event like this would take place. It was 15 years ago that I was actually involved in organizing the Peterson lectures, and it was at about that time that a group of students came forward and went to Dean Laura Tyson and said, we're really interested in socially responsible business and corporate social responsibility, and I think the term sustainability may have just been coming into the world at that time. And Laura, as the dean, she listened, and she put this little team of people together and said, well, why don't you write a plan for that? And lo and behold, now we have a Center for Responsible Business, and we have an Institute for Business and Social Impact, and we have a lecture series that's really focused on ethical visionary leadership. And in our presence today, we have 2 legendary practicing visionaries. I'm thrilled to be here with Claus and Alice, and we're going to make our time together this afternoon, the next 45 or 50 minutes, as much of a conversation as possible. We'll get started amongst ourselves here, but I'd love for you to all be thinking of a topic or a question, and rather than do a big back and forth, what I'm going to do in about 10 minutes is ask some of you that have got a pithy topic that you want to discuss to come up to the microphone and rattle it off, and I'm going to write them down, and then we're going to try to weave a conversation that captures what you're interested in for the rest of the day. Okay? So one of the things that's interesting, when I was reading about both of you in your Wikipedia biographies, one of the things that's prominently noted about both of you is that you're labeled as activists. So we've got 2 activists in a business school and 2 activists who are world-renowned business people. So how does that work? How does the world of activism and business come to life for each of you? Maybe you could share a little bit of your vision of how you make an impact in the world. I think this audience would be very interested in that. Alice, do you want to start with that?
Well, I guess I could just say that I came to Berkeley in 1964. So I became indoctrinated with the free speech movement. And I'd like to say really empowered by it. We had a vision for how we wanted to change the world that was articulated by Mario Savio. And we believed that we could do that we wanted that to happen. And it sort of began for me in the civil rights movement of that time and, of course, the anti-war movement. And we felt like we stopped the war. And I just said, we have to bring the people into politics that have these ideals. And I worked very diligently to get Bob Scheer elected in Congress in the 60s. And I was incredibly disappointed when he lost. He had been such an intellectual who articulated all the reasons that we got involved in Vietnam, and he was such a beautiful thinker. He still is. But when he lost, I just said, I just don't want to. I don't want to be in politics anymore. I want to live in this other way. I want to live in that counterculture world of Berkeley. And I, having been in France and been seduced completely by the slow food culture of the early 60s, I wanted to live like the French. And that's really what propelled me. That and a combination, a little bit of being in England in 1968. If you can imagine, I went to school learning to be a Montessori teacher. And I don't know whether you know about Montessori, but she really did incredible work of educating the whole child, and it was all about educating the senses, smelling and tasting and learning by doing. And so I just took all of that and just became part of me, and I just thought, well, I'm just going to open a restaurant so that my friends can come and eat. It's about food, and I couldn't find food.
Now, Claus, you were about 5 in 1968 or something. So what was happening in Denmark? And for those of us that haven't been to Copenhagen, how much like Berkeley is it?
Well, the sun is not shining as much in winter. But I was growing up in the 60s and 70s in the southernmost part of Denmark in a period that was widely considered the darkest period of Danish food history. So I was raised on a diet composed of margarine and frozen vegetables pre-boiled years before in Eastern Europe, sauce coloring and stock cubes. And the funny thing, I thought you were pointing at that in the beginning, is that what actually changed my life was also 1 year spent in France, though in 1983-84. And my reason for eventually becoming someone who has spent a number of years exploring the interface between business and philanthropy and activism was more rather emotional rather than sort of rooted in some sort of political frustration. So I happened to come from a divorced family also. My parents divorced when I was 14, and I saw them crawling to the sound of the microwave oven for 3 years, eating shit. And then suddenly I come to France, and after a couple of months spent in Paris, I ended up on I got hepatitis, and I ended up on a recreational stay in Gascony, Le Pays des Mousquetaires, where I happened to live with a French family. The man was traiteur, somebody who makes pastry and also cooks. And I witnessed what was, the golden age of French gastronomy. He was a 4th generation baker and cook. He did everything his grandfather had done, and that was not common at that time in France anymore. And also they couldn't have children, and I was I understood that down the road, I was kind of the son for them. So I received so much love and affection and attention in that 6 months in Gascony that it exceeded everything I experienced for the previous 8 years in my life. So I happened to make, I got kind of like a calling, and I felt that I had found the mission of my life, that I had the chance to experience all that, and I needed to go home and improve the Danish food culture. Even though I didn't know how to do that. I just knew that was right for me. But mainly in the beginning it was not about Michelin stars or sort of changing agricultural practices. It was about it was a matter of love. It was a matter of defending the family and giving children the right to grow up in a family where the parents love each other. And I thought that would happen if the food was only good.
You both got the call. I mean, in our entrepreneurship course, we talk about Joseph Campbell, actually. We talk about the hero's journey, an entrepreneur's journey is a hero's journey. And hero's journey normally starts in some kind of foreign outpost, somewhere that is unfamiliar. And that's where you get that authentic call to what you're meant to work on or pursue. Both of you are so well known for making the food system vivid in everything that you do. You've connected growing the farm to the table, the seed and the soil to the soul, and you've both been celebrated for creating these remarkable dining experiences that I was thinking about, Claus, yours to receive that kind of honor, and I peered in a little bit about what you've done at Noma. It looks like a long-run Broadway show. Like it looks intensely theatrical in some ways, and transformational. And similarly, Chez Panisse has an effect on people like that. Could you talk about how you see this this experience that you've been able to create as a means of change and transformation, influence, leadership, perhaps?
You want to start, Alice?
I think we're both in the same place, that it begins with taste. The taste of something can awaken people. And that's really always from the beginning of the restaurant. I wanted people to love the food. And I would do just about anything to engage them with it. And even as far as just giving them the meal, if I wanted to really persuade them. But we started to connect the food with the farms, because people wanted to know where we could get that apricot, or where we could get that pluot, or where we get those green beans, and it helped to bring people into a kind of food culture that wasn't. I was just trying to win them over. I wasn't trying to. Although maybe people think I'm doing that to them with the one menu at the restaurant, but not really. I want them to really fall in love with it, and then I knew that they would come back, and that's just kind of the basis of it. But sometimes it takes, a culture of people that work there, and I know that it happens at Noma. The hospitality of the place helps people understand the food, and that's a beautiful thing.
So I totally agree with the perception of deliciousness as a very powerful instrument if you know how to handle it. And also, I think another similarity is that I have also kind of achieved the majority of my results through seduction rather than sort of protest actions. When I started Noma with Ren Resebi in 2003, it was, we wanted, what we tried to strive for was some sort of systemic change. The previous 15 years I had been opening up a number of maybe 15 food-related companies, everything from an orchard to produce local vinegar with local apples and plums, because I couldn't see the point of leaving a world to our children where the only vinegar that was made in Denmark was made out of white refined sugar. No flavor, no color, no history, no memories, just the lousiest vinegar in the world. When we had apples and quinces and pears and carrots and Jerusalem artichokes and and wonderful berries, everything that could turn into vinegar. So I'd basically been running around without too much money in my pocket, finding an approach through which I could open up underinvested categories. So when I found a category of food where everything was bulk and standardized and low price, and where there were no high-end products, I basically find a way of starting a very small company and at the same time changing demand structures, lifting as we climb. But with Noma, but then at a certain point, after having visited actually Spain, I understood which actions were underlying the Spanish food revolution that turned the Spanish food culture into one of the greatest ones in the world in something like 25 years. And I was inspired by the fact that the Spanish chefs had sat down in '73 and basically decided to kind of revitalize or rejuvenate or update Spanish cooking because they thought their food system had the potential to be better. So what we did back in 2003 was, on the one hand, to open a restaurant that was not about winning international acclaim, but about exploring the potential of our own landscapes. Because at that time, every wonderful restaurant in Denmark was French. French produce, foie gras, truffles, all over the place. There was nothing but that. So we said, what about cabbage? What about herring? What about onion? What about elderflowers? Everything that grows wild in our landscapes. Couldn't that potentially become something wonderful to eat? We asked that question. So we ended up starting Noma, and we wrote in the very first menu, with this restaurant, we want to create a new Nordic cuisine because the other one was not worth recreating. It was a food desert and a margarine paradise. So with this restaurant, we want to create a new Nordic cuisine that embraces the Arctic and brightens the world by virtue of its great taste and its unique character. So we had a regional approach because we knew that access to a great diversity of produce is a prerequisite for great cuisine. And then very soon we came to realize that we could never do this alone. I mean, you cannot change a food system, 2 chefs, a dishwasher, and an entrepreneur. It won't happen. So we got the idea based on the Danish filmmakers, the Dogma brothers, that sort of changed the dynamics of filmmaking by creating a manifesto that maybe we could go about this way, to ask the question, and again, rather than changing incrementally small food products for the better, we could ask the question, if the Nordic cuisine should one day be counted amongst the most wonderful, delicious, responsible, and admirable ones in the world, which values should it lean on down the road? So we kind of explored that question. What would it take to be a great food culture these days? Something that everybody would love, embrace, endorse, and respect. And we spent more than 8 months on studying that question. And eventually we invited the most powerful and respected chefs of the entire region to sit down with us in an 18-hour-long workshop. And we basically wanted them to take ownership to this knowledge and eventually sign the manifesto. And that happened. And then, but the most important thing was that we invited all the stakeholders on the food scene, the political people, the 5 ministers, researchers, top universities, farmers and fishermen, food journalists, to discuss the potential of this project for our region and for the world.
You've done a great job. For those of you in Food Venture Lab and those that are going to take it next semester, of course, what we've seen and heard is this articulation of vision and values coming together in a very potent and compelling way. And then, as Claus just really showed, how to enroll others in that, right? So taking a vision, codifying it in a way that it comes to life, that it becomes charismatic and takes on a life of its own, and then sort of having other people ingest it so it becomes theirs, and then it grows. I'm interested, you know, you've both created, some people would say, rather rarefied experiences in the restaurant world. Not everyone has the great honor or pleasure to go to Noma or Chez Panisse, but there's a real tension. I think, you know, one of the topics that comes up in our class a lot is food as health, or even food potentially as medicine. Food access. How are we going to get this healthy food that's grown in a specific way available to the people that need it most, who are basically find it out of reach? And then how are we going to waste less food? How are we going to become more accountable and more conscious of this system, and where the waste in the system actually becomes a source of energy or food or resource that can really be valued. So maybe you could talk a little bit about those questions. Yeah.
I guess I could talk about
Pick whatever one you like.
Alice first.
Well, I think it all begins with education. There's no question about it for me. And it's the reason that I focused on the public school system. It's kind of our last truly democratic institution in this country. Almost every child goes to school. And if we put in a program in the school that edibly educated children from the time they're in kindergarten, even before that time, where they were brought into a relationship to nature, and they understand where their food comes from, and they learn about cooking in a kitchen. Now that's what the Edible Schoolyard Project is here at Martin Luther King Middle School in Berkeley. And we started that as an experiment 20 years ago. And the idea from the very beginning, when I walked around the campus, and this is a school with 1,000 kids, middle school children, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And they speak 22 different languages at home. So you can imagine a teenage group. But this school, when I walked around, it was built with a lot of land. It was built in 1921 on 17 acres of land. It was never meant to have more than 500 students, but it just moved up to 1,000. And the principal thought that I could come and beautify the school somehow, because he thought the restaurant was connected to gardens. And when I walked around, I just thought, oh my goodness, we need to teach the whole thing. It's not just about a garden. It's just not about food in the school. It's really about teaching every subject using the lab of a garden and a lab of a kitchen. So they're learning math out there in the garden and history in the kitchen. It's academic subjects that they're learning. And I imagined that they could have a cafeteria at the school that would feed every child for free. Every child sits at the table and eats together. I even imagined that school lunch could be an academic subject and the kids could get credit for eating it. Because it could be a language class. It could be a language class. And they're eating the food of that country. It could be just a guidance class where they're talking in a civilized way. But I think one of the big problems, the really biggest problem we have, is that we live in a fast food culture. So we have become what we eat. And when we eat fast food, we digest the ideas of fast, cheap, and easy. That food should be available 24/7. That it's okay to eat in your car. That who cares who's cooking it or where it comes from. It should be the same in Bogota as it is in Berlin. Everything should be available 24/7. And that is what has changed the world around us. So we have to come back to our senses when we're little. And I'll tell you, these kids in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, who have been through the program and have not had, every day divine lunch sitting together. But I always say any one of them could give a TED talk about sustainability. They are so able to understand it. Just 3 little years at school, they have fallen in love with nature. and nature is their friend, you know. So that's really where
Okay.
I'm going, education.
I believe it's fair to say that if you are a poor kid in Denmark, you may be slightly better off than if you are a poor kid in America. And even though we don't have anything like Alice Waters in Denmark, we have a number of initiatives which is kind of down this alley, and also I've run myself a food school for kids for the last 17 years, teaching outside the school in a kind of in a private cookery school as a non-for-profit, 5,000 kids to all the virtues of cooking and consuming the right things. So what I did in order to be able to wake up in the morning with the feeling that I did my part was to turn my attention towards some communities where people didn't have the same opportunities as kids who grew up in Denmark, and actually also using education as an instrument to try to improve the food systems. But not only education, also all the learnings from creating Noma, the Nordic cuisine movement, kind of frictionless, without too much investment of tangible money, almost like a virus. So I went to Bolivia through my foundation, and in order to explore if with deliciousness as an instrument, and with this approach of creating a local food culture with integrity, and by educating the young boys and girls of that place through food, if you could kind of induce some sort of systemic change, and so far it's going pretty well there, but it's all rooted in teaching and train the trainer methods.
So if you have a question or a topic that you want to put on the agenda today, come up to the microphone. We'll talk a few more minutes, and you just get a little line of people. Just introduce yourself. Come on up, introduce yourself, and give us your topic.
Sure. Hi, my name is Shadi Androuse. I'm a second year in the full-time MBA program, and I wrote my question down so I wouldn't forget it. So both of you have created world-renowned restaurants, and part of that success is due to a culture you established within the restaurant early on. My question is two parts. What cultural elements mattered most when you were creating the restaurants, and what actions have you taken to sustain and maintain those cultural elements as you guys have expanded and grew from a restaurant to an ecosystem?
Great, come on up. If you have we're going to get a whole bunch of questions, so if you have one, now's your chance to get it on the agenda, so come on up.
Hi, my name is Parag Sampat, also a second year in the full-time program. So my question is around the people. We talked about how creating a unique restaurant experience has been kind of part of the vision that both of you have had. But my question is more about how do you communicate that to people, and especially when you are just meeting them for the first time and maybe potentially bringing them into your restaurant. How do you communicate that, and how do you know they're going to be able to act upon that vision?
My question's for Alice. I'm wondering how being a woman has affected the way you run your business, and how the alliances you've made have helped you in that respect.
Thank you. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Ellen Martin, MBA 2007 from Haas. My question is about your role in the future of the global food shortage, and would love to hear more about how you see the role of influencing the suppliers and the farms themselves on a large scale so that we can change actually what happens far beyond the individual wonderful pioneer restaurants that you guys have both established.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I'm a student at Berkeley. My question really has to do with the idea of cosmetically challenged produce and imperfect produce, and how you kind of see that playing a role in the new wave of food system and businesses, and also just social entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Rachel DeZombach. I'm a PhD student in engineering. And in climate change, we talk a lot about tipping points and when a system is too far gone. I was wondering what you see as, for food culture, there's so much inertia around change, and what do you see as the tipping points for when the system's too far gone?
Hi, my name's Christine Hammond. I'm in the MBA and MPH program, and I think we all feel super grateful to live in the lovely Berkeley food bubble. But looking at how do we tackle these challenges in larger places, more rural places, more spread out places, and kind of the experiences you've had or bright spots you see when you're talking about not the Bay Area ecosystem and maybe not Copenhagen. How do you expand beyond that?
Hi, I'm Ashley Adams. I'm a second-year MBA student and work with Will at the Food Business School. My question's more around which of the levers that you've been using do you think would be most effective from a policy perspective, and in your work there, what have you seen resonate with governments to try to affect change at that scale?
My name is Val Cipollone. I work for a local wine importer. And I have a question too about scale, and not necessarily production, but distribution, and not as it pertains to wine, but all kinds of really well-crafted goods that need to come to market. And I'm seeing in distribution that. And also, so scale and relationship. Okay?
Great.
Because that's changing.
Great.
And
we'll take that one on.
Okay, good.
Gavin, MBA. Quick question. Which journalists, books, magazines do you guys follow, read, and enjoy?
Okay. Practical. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Hagen. Thank you for shaping a more sustainable food system. What do you think, for many of us that are now being educated, is the next step in creating a more sustainable food system?
Okay, this will be it. There's a lot of questions.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Short and sweet. Hi.
We're going to weave it all together.
Hi, my name is Stacy. I'm a fourth year in the anthropology department. I want to be a farmer in Oakland when I graduate. My question is about alternative agro, aeroponics, hydroponics for crops. and I'm concerned with monetization, about reaching restaurants, and if you have any thoughts about how I can do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Last two, come on.
Hi, I'm Cameron, first year MBA. California is currently in drought, and I'm wondering what you think the food community's role and responsibility is in responding to the drought.
Great, thanks.
Hi, my name is Madeline. I'm a student in the College of Natural Resources, and I was also a student at Greenstring Farm. Go Greenstring, there we go. I'm wondering how your relationship with farmers have changed over the last few decades. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll do our best to, well, we'll weave those in. I think this, let's talk a little bit about this creative tension between local and centralized, or local and global, and scale and artisanal. I mean, it's a conundrum. And I also think, though, one thing just to acknowledge is that people's work, certainly, I think, Alice, you were a great influence to two students we had here at Berkeley 9 or 10 years ago, Kristen Richmond and Kirsten Toby, who were in actually our social entrepreneurship class. And sort of in this ecosystem of care for nature and food, and education, came up with the idea for Revolution Foods. And they're now, with many of sort of the influences and that they learned here, and I think from you and others, their company is serving about 1.5 million meals a week now to many to underserved students. So it's interesting to me that a lot, it's not an either or, it's really a both and, isn't it?
It is a both and. But I think we get too wrapped up in this idea of scaling up. I think there is, I think less is more. And I've never wanted to have more than one restaurant, period. I mean, we serve around 500 people a day. But, and we have one farm, Bob Kennard's farm, Greenstring, that is our major farmer. And I have to say, addressing the issues of drought and all the issues of food production and waste, we are in partnership with Bob, and he is informing us. We are taking his lead. If he says, I've got nettles for you, figure out how to use them. We'll figure out how to use them. In fact, we have the most delicious nettles pizza at the restaurant.
There you go.
And it's so healthy and so good that the nettles are for you. But it's, I think a lot of these issues have to be answered by communities of people, small communities of people, getting together and having that conversation. I do think, though, that there is a set of values that really needs to be articulated in terms of cities and countries, and that we have to be detailed about it, about the production of food. And I see the best way to change the food system is by having a criteria for the buying of that food. And it includes wages to farm workers, includes packaging, it includes every imaginable way that we can care for the land and care for the people who are eating. And I think that place of equality has to become the public school lunch table. Everybody is invited there for free. What a beautiful way to learn to share and to understand, to communicate with all different kinds of people than at the table. And you have to know that 85% of the kids in this country do not eat one meal with their family. So the whole system has broken down of sharing, of learning about older people, younger people, all of the social, very important rights of civilization have been lost in the fast food culture.
Well, the vision you're sharing is really in contrast with a lot of what's taught right now in a business school. A lot of the aspiration, as we know, is about scale, is about people equate scale and impact. I think you're challenging us to rethink that. I think the Center for Responsible Business and some of our other programs are the perfect place to start doing that. I mean, maybe we should challenge the students in the room to think about what are the courses that aren't being taught yet that need to kind of inculcate some of that value. I mean, when I hear you speak, I think of E.F. Schumacher and sort of, small is beautiful and small systems. I do think that there's, in the business world, a really interesting opportunity to find ways to link small integral systems together in a way that, that learning is shared and systems and resources are shared.
As I'm saying, I mean, it's the shared values. And then the way that that is implemented in different countries and different places. But it's all, these are ideas that have been around since the beginning of civilization. Eating locally, eating with family and friends, eating in season, saving the food for the winter, using every part of it, treasuring the farmer. Food is precious. I mean, we've only lost this, really, since the industrialization of food.
It feels like the other pressure is our constant, interaction now with cloud-based data, and there's a real push now in food, certainly delivery. There's been an enormous amount of venture capital going in to create, logistical efficiencies, and there's a vision that a company could serve 100,000 great meals to people's door. You're basically saying we have to rethink that.
I really think so. It's for me, the pleasure is in the doing. I love to cook. I think a lot of people love to cook. We have been taught that cooking is hard and complicated and too much trouble. Don't cook. But I love to cook. Many, many people love to garden. I mean, think of the victory gardens we had during the war. At World War I and World War II, we grew so much food. We help to the armies all over Europe with the food that we sent. And yet, and my parents had their garden for their whole life. And they ate from it in the most, we never went out to dinner. We ate from that garden in the winter and in the summer. And so I think those ideas are so valuable. And that we have to come back to our senses, back to that place where we're in the beauty of nature. I mean, it's irresistible to me. I mean, I can't get enough of biodiversity.
Yeah. Now, Claus, you're kind of an ambassador. You've gone to South America.
She's more romantic than I am, actually. I mean,
she said at lunch
I really have the occasion to say that.
She said she was an idealist. She wasn't kidding. So.
But it's about access to beauty too. I mean, we are missing the beauty of an everyday experience.
I'm drunk
of
right here already, so you're singing
but
my
you know what I mean. I just love to go to the restaurant and see all of the kinds of green beans and roasted peppers and.
Something even more important 4 minutes ago. And that was the idea that this is too complex for any single person to solve. And even though we are smart, we can't fix it all. I mean, if the Minister of sort of Agriculture, the Minister of Education, and the Minister of Health had been able to create some wonderful food systems, I'm sure they would have done it. So apparently it's too complex for them to fix it. They basically, it moves in the wrong direction.
They're in different buildings.
So that's what Alice said before, and it's totally aligned with the whole idea of sort of sharing an idea, a vision, and that probably few people would be against. I think that's very important, that we have as many people as possible, independently of their political color, to come to the common understanding that whether it's tomorrow or in 15 years, we can't be against a clean groundwater. We can't be against combating poverty. We cannot be against the idea of having enough food for the coming generations. So basically, we may not agree on what to do tomorrow, each of us, but at least we can agree on the principles and on the values. And if we sort of write that in concrete, that this is our constitution, this is our food constitution, and then teach that to our children, and share that idea with as many people as possible, then I'm sure that the systems themselves will kind of repair these imperfections. I'm optimist in that sense. Cohn, he wrote, there is a crack in everything, that's where the light gets in. And I believe that the closer we will get to some sort of systemic collapse, the more people will work to kind of protect us against that. And I think that America is a very good example of that, everything that's going on, not only in California, but in particular in California, maybe.
You've both managed to be very successful in your business careers, and you've freed yourself up to be able to have a global purview and be able to advocate and act and influence. Do you have any quick secret to your success of how you do that? Is it about the people around you, or is it about focus, or what? How do you do that?
I can start that one for a while. Can I start this one?
Yes, you can start that one. I'll end it.
So one thing I lean on is the idea that that life is a long journey, and you wake up with the idea that you wanna improve a little bit compared to yesterday, that you wanna become one day the best version of yourself. That is one thing I have leaned towards. Another thing is the idea of not having too firm 5-year plans that live your life and become some sort of a vehicle for whatever is your destiny. So keep your life and your agenda and your mind a little bit open for whatever you come to understand tomorrow, because you don't get it right now. You will get more tomorrow. And then my spiritual father, Chez in France, he told me maybe the most important thing that I have learned in my entire life. And I want to share that with the students here. My father, he had me cutting the grass laying around our house 3 times a week, and he was obsessed with me doing that as quickly as possible. So he counted the time and gave me the time lapse and counted the seconds. I gave me penalty points if I left unfinished batches. And it was a very special experience. And then when I came down, Guy, he was a Renaissance man. And at a certain time, at a certain moment where I live in his pastry shop, and he doesn't earn money. He gives, like Alice, he gave a lot of cakes away. He gave people discounts even though he didn't know them. And he never challenged a price, and he bought the best produce. And he threw everything out every night because he had so many employees that he would do everything from the scratch the next morning. So one day I had enough of all that economic waste, and inspired by my father, maybe I challenged his behavior. And I said, you have to do something about it. Your wife want to travel, and she can never go anywhere because you've got no money. And then he told me, he said in French, he said, le bonheur, c'est savoir ce que l'on veut et le vouloir passionnément. Et mon fils, quoi que tu fasses, il faut que tu l'aimes. And in English, it is happiness, my son, is about knowing what you want to do with your life and having the guts to follow your heart. And I think that one you should never compromise in your lives.
Thank you. If Dean Lyons were here, he'd be very happy. You've just articulated all the values of the business school. Beyond yourself and confidence without attitude. And thank you.
Well, I think the most important thing about the restaurant has been a collaboration with other people who work there, and it's been that way since the very beginning. And I really felt like I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't possibly do it myself. And so I shared all of the responsibility and became partners with all of the people that were critical to the running of the restaurant. And we have a kind of board of directors of Chez Panisse. Of course, they not so much to really vote on things, but to give advice on all kinds of issues, whether it's about tipping or it's about wage equitability or it's about repairing the building, whatever it is. We have a group of people who've been involved in the restaurant for a long period of time that want to make sure that the restaurant continues in its mission in the best possible way, and those meetings are so valuable to all of us. But I've always said, if somebody can do it better than I can, as well as or better, it's theirs to do. You know, they can run it, they can do it, and I hire my friends because I like to be with people that I know and I share a lot with beyond just doing the work, and maybe that comes from being a woman in the business, and that I think about maybe nurturing more than it being an artistic expression, although I think both of them are incredibly valuable. And I always like a balance of men and women in the restaurant, and younger people and older people. It makes it work well. And it's allowed me, because really the mission of the restaurant is to change the world, and it's allowed me to travel and to do what I need to do, to be involved with Slow Food International. And all of it, I think, helps to promote the ideas of the Edible Schoolyard Project. And writing books, whatever we do, it's all in a bigger mission. And I guess the little final thing I want to say is that when you have meaningful work to do, everybody's job, no matter how small it is, whether you're a dishwasher or just cleaning up at night, whatever your job is, all of a sudden has a big meaning. You're part of a movement. You're part of this thing that is changing everyone's life. And so You have pride in it. And I think we've lost that big mission of what this country is about. And it's very, very hard to find your place in it and your meaning of your own life. So I think businesses have the great potential, small businesses, of creating the mission that inspires the people who work within.
That's wonderful. Well, you both expressed and embody such personality of care, really, and intent, and you've underscored the really importance of integrity, of really sticking with your vision and being committed to it. And I hear sort of a notion of both patience and kind of a persistence. You said you weren't really in politics anymore, but I don't think that's necessarily true, Alice.
And the Socratic idea of politics,
yes.
that it's your interactions with everybody else in the world.
I think we're going to have to take on food waste, climate change, and scale at the next Peterson lecture. But it's been a great pleasure to have you both here, and thank you all for being here today.